The first thing I noticed as I stepped into the cemetery was the silence. It was the kind of stillness that seemed unnatural, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The soft rustle of the trees barely made a sound, and the only other noise was the distant hum of the wind, gently weaving its way through the tombstones. The sky was overcast, a dull gray that seemed to mirror the heaviness in my chest. I couldn't help but feel that I had been carrying this weight for far too long. I had spent months convincing myself that I was ready for this moment. I had spent years avoiding it, pretending that I could move on without facing the past, without facing her. But today, as I stood before the worn stone that marked her resting place, I realized how utterly unprepared I was. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to say goodbye. I wasn't ready to face the consequences of my own actions. I stared at the grave, my heart aching as the name carved into the stone became clearer. Emily Thompson, my best friend, my greatest regret. Emily had been everything to me. She had been the one person I could count on, the one person who understood me in ways no one else ever could. We had been inseparable since the moment we met. It had been years ago in our small hometown, in a place where nothing much ever happened, except for the bond that formed between us. We were two teenagers who found solace in each other's company, who spent countless afternoons talking about everything and nothing at all. We had made plans for the future, dreams of a life that we would share, filled with laughter and adventure. But life has a way of slipping through your fingers when you least expect it. I had ruined it. I had ruined us. The guilt that had consumed me since that night was almost unbearable. I had never apologized for what I did to her. I had never even told her how much she meant to me before it was too late. And now, standing at her grave, I realized that I had lost the chance forever. I hadn't been there for her. I hadn't been there when she needed me the most. The fight we had, the words I had said, words I could never take back, still haunted me. I had pushed her away, not knowing that it would be the last time I would ever see her. And when the news of her death reached me, I had felt numb, as if the world had crumbled around me. I had never imagined that I would lose her so suddenly, so violently. A car accident. That's all it had taken. One moment, one collision of fate, and she was gone. And I had never gotten the chance to make things right. I had never gotten the chance to apologize. I closed my eyes, trying to calm the storm of emotions swirling inside me. I wasn't sure what I had come here for. I didn't expect her to answer, didn't expect any sort of miraculous resolution. I just needed to say it, to speak the words that had been locked inside me for far too long. "I'm sorry," I whispered, my voice barely audible in the stillness of the cemetery. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not yet. Not until I could gather the strength to let them go. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I should have been there. I should have told you how much you meant to me. I should have apologized. I should have tried harder. I was selfish, and now it's too late." I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breathing, trying to keep the weight of my emotions from overwhelming me. It was hard, harder than I had ever imagined it would be. I had spent years telling myself that I didn't need to come here, that I had moved on, that I was better off without confronting my past. But today, it felt like the weight of everything I had avoided was catching up to me. I stared down at the grave, wishing with every fiber of my being that I could go back and undo the things I had done. I wished I could turn back time, that I could tell her all the things I had left unsaid, but time doesn't work that way. And now the only thing left was a cold stone and a name etched into it. "I'm sorry," I repeated, my voice breaking as the tears finally escaped, rolling down my cheeks. "I'm so sorry." I stood there for what felt like an eternity, the tears streaming down my face as I allowed myself to feel the full weight of my sorrow. There was no one else here, just me and the silence, and the memory of the friend I had lost. And then, as if from nowhere, I heard a sound, a rustle, a movement behind me. I froze. My heart skipped a beat, and for a brief, horrifying moment, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But no, the sound was real. Someone was there. Someone was watching me. I turned around, my breath catching in my throat as I looked over my shoulder. What I saw took me completely by surprise. A man, tall, broad-shouldered, his face partially obscured by the shadows of the trees behind him. He wasn't someone I recognized immediately, but there was something about him that made my heart race. In my chest, my first instinct was to step back, to run, but something stopped me. Something about the way he stood there as if waiting for me to acknowledge him made me pause. And then, as if sensing my hesitation, he stepped forward into the light. And then I saw his face. It was him. Her brother. I froze. The air seemed to leave my lungs and a wave of emotions rushed over me. The face in front of me, though familiar, felt strange, distant. I hadn't seen him in years. Not since Emily's funeral, that day when everything seemed to lose its meaning. And now, here he was, standing before me, his eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my heart race. You're here? I asked, my voice sounding strange, as if the words had to fight to come out. He just stared at me in silence, for a moment. I didn't know what he was thinking, what he was feeling. Her brother, the man who in some way also carried the same pain I did. He had lost his sister in the same tragic, irreversible way. There weren't enough words to express what I was feeling. I wanted to apologize to him too, but the words were stuck in my throat. I thought it was you, he finally said, his voice softer than I expected, but still carrying a subtle sadness that I could feel. I took a deep breath, trying to find something to say. What could I say to him? What could I say to someone who had lost someone so dear and who, deep down, knew that I had failed in a way that could never be fixed? I didn't know what he wanted from me. Maybe an explanation. Maybe a justification. But more than anything, I knew he didn't want to hear empty apologies. I couldn't offer that. I didn't know you'd come here, I said weakly. He gave a small smile, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was a sad, tired smile, like someone who had been carrying a burden for far too long. I've been here often, he replied, his voice quiet, almost distant, but I didn't expect to see you here. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my nerves. The guilt was suffocating, and I wasn't sure if it was worse now, facing him, or if it had always been this bad. I had never known how to face him. I had never known how to face anyone after what had happened to Emily. I'm sorry, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. His gaze softened, just slightly, but there was still something guarded in his eyes. I know, he said. But knowing doesn't change anything, does it? My chest tightened. No, I whispered, feeling the weight of his words sink in. It doesn't. For a long moment, we stood there, neither of us saying anything. The only sound the soft rustling of the leaves in the wind. It was as if we were both suspended in time, caught in a moment of shared grief, shared regret. There was nothing I could say that would make things right. There was nothing anyone could say. Finally, he broke the silence. She forgave you, he said, his voice low and steady. I looked at him, startled. What? She forgave you? He repeated, his eyes meeting mine. Before the accident, she said she had forgiven you. She knew you were sorry. My heart stopped for a moment. I couldn't process what he was saying. I had spent all this time believing that she had hated me, that I had lost her forever. And now he was telling me that she had already forgiven me. How could that be possible? She said that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, his expression softening, though there was still an edge to his words. Yes, she did. But she didn't want you to think that forgiveness meant everything would be okay. She wanted you to understand. She wanted you to learn from it. I felt a rush of emotions flood through me. Shock, relief, a deep sense of confusion. How could I have missed that? How could I have never known that she had forgiven me? It felt like the world had shifted beneath my feet. For so long, I had carried this unbearable weight, thinking that I had failed her in the most irredeemable way. But now, hearing that she had forgiven me, I didn't know what to feel. I wanted to believe it. I wanted to believe that I hadn't destroyed everything between us. Why didn't she tell me? I asked, my voice trembling. Her brother sighed, a deep, heavy sound. She didn't want to burden you. She didn't want you to think you had to fix everything. She just wanted you to understand. She knew you were sorry. I closed my eyes, the tears I had been holding back threatening to spill over once again. All these years I had thought I was the one who needed to make amends. I thought I had to fix everything, to make up for the hurt I had caused. But now, hearing this, I realized that forgiveness was never about me fixing it. It was about understanding, accepting, and moving forward. I didn't know, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I didn't know she had forgiven me. He watched, me quietly, his gaze steady. It doesn't matter now. What matters is that you understand. What matters is that you don't carry this burden anymore. For your sake, and for hers. I nodded slowly, my chest tightening with a mixture of relief and sorrow. It felt like I had been walking through life in a fog, unaware of the forgiveness that had already been extended to me. And now, standing in front of Emily's grave, I realized that I didn't have to carry the weight of my past anymore. I never should have let it go this far, I said quietly, my voice breaking. I should have told her how much I loved her, how much she meant to me. Her brother stepped closer, his voice softer now, almost gentle. She knew in her own way, and she would have wanted you to move on. She would have wanted you to forgive yourself. For a long time I couldn't speak. I just stood there, letting his words wash over me, letting them sink into my soul. Maybe, just maybe, I had finally found the peace I had been searching for, not because I deserved it, but because Emily had given it to me, even after everything. I've been carrying this guilt for so long, I whispered, my voice trembling. I didn't know how to let it go. You don't have to anymore, he said simply. It's time. And with that, I felt the last remnants of the weight that had consumed me for so long begin to lift. I didn't know what would come next. I didn't know how to move forward from here. But for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. We stood there, the three of us in a way. There was me, broken and lost, facing the consequences of a friendship I had shattered. Then there was Emily, not physically there, but somehow present in the silence that enveloped the cemetery. And there was her brother, a man who had carried the same grief as I had, but had carried it in a way that I had never understood. I stood next to Emily's grave for what felt like an eternity. The cold had seeped into my bones, but the weight in my chest had lightened, just enough to make it feel like I could breathe again. I had carried the guilt of her death, the guilt of my part in our falling out, for so long. But I realized something as I stood there. The guilt wasn't hers to give, it wasn't her responsibility. It had been mine all along, and I had to let go of it. The apology I had sought for all these years hadn't been something she needed. It was something I needed to give to myself. Her brother didn't say much more. He didn't have to. He had done what I couldn't do for so long. He had given me peace, a peace I had thought I'd never find. And now I was standing there in front of her resting place, finally understanding that forgiveness isn't always a two-way street. Sometimes, it's about accepting what we've done and finding the courage to move forward, even when it feels impossible. After a long silence, I turned toward him. His expression was unreadable, his eyes still heavy with the same sorrow I had carried. But there was something else there now. Something that hadn't been there before. You're right, I said softly, almost to myself. I needed to forgive myself. He nodded, his face softening a little. You were never the villain, you know. You were just lost. We all were. I took in his words slowly, trying to let them settle inside me. He was right in a way. We had all been lost. Me, Emily, him. We had all been fumbling through life, unsure of how to deal with the things that weighed us down. But it was in that moment, standing at the edge of her grave, that I realized something crucial. The way we hurt each other wasn't always intentional. Sometimes it was the result of our own fears, our own misunderstandings. And sometimes we have to forgive ourselves before we can forgive anyone else. I glanced one last time at the grave before turning away. The weight that had suffocated me for so long had finally begun to lift. I didn't feel free yet. No, that would take time. But in that moment, for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. And that somehow felt like the first step toward healing. Her brother didn't follow me immediately. Instead, he stood there for a while longer, his gaze lingering on the grave. I didn't know what he was thinking, but I knew he wasn't ready to leave just yet. He had lost more than I had. I had lost a friend, but he had lost his sister. And that loss was something no amount of time or words could ever heal. "Thank you," I said quietly, turning back to him. "Thank you for telling me. I needed to hear it." He gave me a small nod, but his eyes remained distant, lost in thoughts of his own. He didn't respond, and I didn't expect him to. He didn't need to say anything. I had said my piece, and I felt as if, for the first time, I could leave this place without carrying her memory as a burden. Her memory could stay with me now, not as a painful reminder, but as a tribute to what we had shared. I had her forgiveness, even if it had come too late for me to understand. "Goodbye, Emily," I whispered once more, my voice catching in my throat. "I'll never forget you." Her brother stayed silent, his head bowed slightly. He seemed to be having his own private conversation with the air, with her, with the past. I didn't intrude on it. I understood more than I could explain. Sometimes, grief needs its own space, its own time. We don't get to choose when it ends, and we don't always get to choose how it ends. I turned and began to walk away, my steps slow but sure. As I walked past rows of headstones, I realized how quiet everything had become, how still the world was around me. It was almost as if I were walking through a dream, unsure of where the path would lead next. But I didn't feel lost anymore. Not completely. The steps I took felt like a beginning, not an end. And then, as I reached the entrance of the cemetery, I heard him call my name. "Wait." I turned around, surprised to hear him speak again. Her brother was walking toward me, his pace steady, his hands in his pockets. His expression had softened, and there was something in his eyes now that wasn't there before. An understanding, maybe, or a hint of closure. "I know this doesn't fix anything," he said, his voice low but steady. "But maybe it's time to let go. Maybe we both need to let go." I nodded slowly, feeling the lump in my throat return. Letting go. It was harder than I had ever imagined, but standing here, in front of him, in front of Emily's grave, I realized that letting go didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting that sometimes things happen that we can't control, and sometimes we don't get to fix everything. But we can move forward piece by piece, even if the road ahead isn't always clear. "I'll try," I said, my voice a little stronger than before. "I'll try to let go." He nodded, and for the first time his gaze softened completely, like a weight had been lifted from his shoulders as well. "Take care of yourself," he said. And with that he turned and walked back to the grave, leaving me to my thoughts. As I walked away from the cemetery, the mist still swirling around the gravestones, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. I had come here to beg for forgiveness, to find closure. But in the end, what I had found was something more valuable. I had found the courage to forgive myself. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy, I knew that. But I had taken the first step, and that was enough. If you've ever had a moment where you were looking for forgiveness or even the chance to forgive yourself, I'd love to hear your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, please feel free to comment and share your experiences. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this one. Sometimes healing comes from the most unexpected places.